Hello, 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 and welcome to all you PMOs, PMEs, POMOs, POMEs, so stupid, and PAMQs. Welcome to the world, the podcast for people who have left a cult but somehow still feel like they're the ones who need to apologize for it. As you can tell, I'm mixing it up a little bit today, just to keep things interesting. As you all know, I'm Dr. Ryan Lee. Blah, 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 blah. You know the rest. I'm in a certain kind of mood today. I am recently fresh out of a cold plunge, and I don't know if you guys do this or not, but there's a certain art to knowing when is too much. And Ryan is not good at knowing that in lots of different ways in life. But yeah, you go in, so there's a river near my house, and you can just dive right in, and it's pretty ice cold, and it is immediately exhilarating. Whatever was happening with you energetically prior to that plunge is just not there anymore. And it's literally, it's so much better and cleaner than caffeine, which I also have plenty of, just to be fair. Yeah, but then there's this thing that happens where I'm like, oh my God, that feels great. I need more of that. And then I go in for round 2 of the plunge, and that results in me being fucking just ice cold to the bone for the next 4 hours. And now I've decided, instead of laying out in the sun, to come into a dark booth and talk to you guys. No regrets, but man, I am very cold. Yeah, so we were going to have a very special episode this week that was going to be my very first interview ever, which is something I've resisted for a lot of different reasons. Mainly because I don't know. The interviews that I listen to in a lot of podcasts, they just fucking go on forever. And it's just so little meat in the whole thing. Anyways, so I decided to make an exception just to kind of play around if we could do something interesting with a good friend of mine named Sean Miller. This dude is an amazing next-level artist, not only an ex-Jehovah's Witness, but has channeled all of his experiences as a result of being a Jehovah's Witness into his art. And it is, I don't know, words can't really do it justice, but he is in the process right now of developing and producing a TV series that was very much based on his whole experience as a witness. Anyways, so I thought, you know what, screw it. Let's try the interview thing. And here's the thing. I started talking to him, and I'll be honest, it was all meat. I don't want to oversell it, but it was a fucking captivating conversation that I think you guys would definitely be interested in, and plenty of things that you could glean and benefit from. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe this interview thing could actually work and be useful to people. I was very excited. The interview lasted probably like two hours over that, something like that. Fucking captivating. And then I sit down to do all the editing. Oh. And I play back my audio, and it sounds like I'm talking into a tin cup. You can't hear shit. I don't know exactly what the fuck happened. Something with my technical shit. Anyways, I'm not going to bore you with all that. The bottom line is, it was a great interview, and I fucked it up. So here's the thing. We actually are still going to be doing that, but we decided to wait another week or two so that we can forget about the conversation we had and hopefully reapproach it in a fresh, organic kind of way. Anyway, so lots of interesting stuff to get to today. I'm just going to, if you don't mind, say a few more things that I want to share with you guys. Now, as you guys know, I obviously am not doing any advertisements. I can't imagine that I ever will. It just feels yuck. And with that being said, I hope you will excuse the one exception that I will make for myself as we continue to talk about this retreat that we're doing. We just finished our very first retreat, and it went fucking fantastic. Really, on all levels, just transformative experiences. I mean, it's hard to just sort of summarize in a few sentences that just doesn't miss all the nuances and the beauty of the whole thing. But yeah, because it went so well, we are very excited about the next one coming up in July. Yeah, and if what I've been talking about speaks to you, or you have some curiosity, by all means, reach out at drryanlee.com/retreat. And I'd be happy to meet with you and talk about whether this type of retreat would actually be a good fit for you. And I just thought I'd share like a couple of things from the last retreat that really stood out in my mind. One, on just a general level, it was so fucking cool to be surrounded by a bunch of people who generally in life feel a little bit alien as a result of our background being ex-JWs witnesses. You know, kind of wandering through the world, of course, forming new relationships, of course, developing and forming new bonds, and also more or less, you know, having an experience where you connect with people and they don't quite get it. You know, they don't quite get the depth of what we're talking about. So yeah, one of the most striking things among many things of that week was how nice it was and how clearly nice it was for everybody to be surrounded by people who totally fucking got it, you know, who really understood where you came from. And there's not a whole, we can skip over the whole explaining what this is and what that is and go right to like how we feel about it, you know? I mean, the whole experience gave me this desire to just like find a way to buy an island somewhere on this planet and just populate it with ex-JWs witnesses. It was so great. It felt like being home. It felt like we had all found our tribe. And yeah, even though we all had to go back to our respective homes, it feels like we have been able to really continue that connection, that feeling. And I'm really grateful for that. Anyways, one of the things I wanted to mention, and I'm gonna name a person because I know that he's okay, is I want to talk about Matt. And one of my favorite memories of the retreat. So I set this premise, we set this premise, you know, of radical authenticity, radical honesty. And I'll probably return to that in another episode and talk about the value of that and how great it is and for a lot of different reasons. But basically set the premise that, you know, in the container of this retreat, if nowhere else in the world we do not have to bullshit, we don't have to wear masks, we don't have to say what we don't really feel, and we created an environment that helped people feel safe to really speak, you know, what they really feel in total honesty. And to everyone's credit, they really took the assignment and ran with it. But some people in particular really ran with it, which is exactly, oh my God, it was exactly what I wanted. So Matt, you know, after the first ceremony we have what's called an integration session the next day where we talk about what happened the night before. And Matt just fucking ran with the assignment, man, in terms of honesty. He was sitting there and he's like, you got under my nerves. And the way you were singing, I didn't really like that. And that really bothered me. And you were all up in your shit and making noises. And that was fucking irritating the shit out of me. And, and it's so hard to capture because, okay, first of all, when I'm conveying this, it sounds like, oh my God, that's such an intense thing to say. But it was delightful. Like everybody was just eating it up. I don't know if you guys know who Don Rickles is, but it felt like one of those moments where, like, after Matt just lambasted, skewered. Everybody was like, oh, do me next. Oh my God, it was one of my favorite moments. And it's just it was such a beautiful example of when somebody gives themselves full permission to actually be totally honest about what they're thinking. There's whatever it is that they're sharing, there is this instant feeling of delight on the person receiving it because it's such a breath of fresh air when people are just really saying what they think and what they feel. And that was one of the things I was really proud that we were able to do in this past retreat, and we plan to do in future retreats, is create this container that makes people really feel safe enough to just let it hang out and then sort through the pieces of what that looks like, but starting from a place of authenticity and honesty. Anyways, if any of that speaks to you, I really, really reach out to me. Let's talk. This is a really special experience, and I'm really excited about the possibility of offering this experience to as many people as possible. And yeah, if finances are a concern, reach out anyways, because we do have some scholarship options available. We definitely need people who can afford to pay their way because that helps support us in what we're doing. But we definitely want to make this accessible to people who really, really want to do this kind of work but just don't have the means financially. But please, if what I'm sharing sounds really appealing to you and the only thing standing in the way is your finances, reach out. Let's talk. Let's see if we can figure out something. Okay? Okay. And now let's move on to the main event. So today we're going to begin a discussion about the N-word. I'm just going to leave it there for a second. Let that hang. The N-word, of course, that I'm talking about is narcissism. I've been putting off talking about this subject for a while for a lot of reasons. I mean, partially because it's just thrown around so much, but also I think in relation to the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's actually a really glaring issue that is worth discussing and giving some further attention to. Now, quick shout out to Dakota. He had said, these multiple part episodes, just fucking do it in one long episode, man. And I agree. It just sort of, it breaks up the flow. However, that said, this topic in particular is pretty nuanced and has a lot of ins and outs. So mostly for today's, why can't I say today? For today's episode, we're going to be focusing mostly on what narcissism looks like, particularly within the context of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, before we dive in, I want to make it very clear that I'm not here to demonize narcissists or people that are on that spectrum. But I am here to talk about the chaos that spins in the wake of people that have this way of interacting with the world and explore why you might walk away from every interaction with that person feeling like you have been emotionally mugged in a parking lot outside of a Kingdom Hall. So why don't we start with a checklist, see if any of these rings a bell. Do you have someone in your life who can never be wrong? Who can't take responsibility for how their behavior affects other people? Who dominates every conversation like a watchtower study that they're conducting? When you engage with this person, do you walk away from visits with them feeling like your soul needs some Gatorade or whatever the equivalent, electrolyte equivalent would be? Does this person leave passive-aggressive comments that belittle you and strangely seem to come out more when you're happy or doing well in life? Or conversely, do they seem just like weirdly a little too excited when tragedy strikes? Does this person require excessive praise or alternatively always playing the victim and really pulling for sympathy? And this last one, which maybe is more telling, do you find yourself rehearsing the conversation before you actually talk to them? Carefully scripting and going through every if this, then that scenarios, basically just to avoid setting them off. If you're not a yes to most of these, well, congratulations! You're probably dealing with someone on the narcissistic spectrum. Now, I use the word spectrum very intentionally because the truth is, we all dip into some of these behaviors in certain situations. We all have potential to act a little narcissistically. 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 There we go. We'll go with that one. In certain situations that trigger us or make us feel backed into a corner. But the problem is when these patterns of behavior become an entire way of being in life, an entire personality. Now, this topic, it's not just like a hobby for me, a weird secondary hobby. It's kind of my second specialty after cult recovery. It is narcissism, or more specifically, working with the victims of narcissists. Now, I had some personal reasons to explore those avenues, related to different things and dynamics in my own family. But it became really unavoidable when I shifted from general practice to working with ex-JWs. So back then, when I was working with the general population, in the people that I worked with, I would encounter narcissistic personality types in the parents of maybe like 20% of the people I worked with. But once I started working with ex-JWs, oh my God, it shot up to like 80%. I'm not exaggerating. Like that's a conservative estimate of like 80%, to the point where I have to, like, when people come in, I have to resist the urge to kind of fill in a lot of the blanks before they even start talking about certain relationships in their life that have caused them nothing but drama and chaos. And then I'll give them the checklist that I just gave you guys. And they're like, oh my God, have you met this person? I'm like, no, that's some narcissistic shit. It's not a cute coincidence. There's a pattern here. So in today's, why is today such a hard word to say, today? In today's episode, we're going to cover common narcissistic behaviors and profiles. We're going to explore why the JW organization functions like a narcissistic entity in a three-piece suit. And we're going to save the effects of narcissistic abuse for a future episode, because that's just a whole other thing. Okay, so let's start with some rough definitions. I'm not going to get lost in the DSM criteria because most people aren't diagnosing anyone. We're just trying to figure out why we feel like trash after brunch with one of your parents. So broadly speaking, what we're really talking about is the consistency and severity of these types of narcissistic behaviors. Now, for those who don't know much about narcissism, your first thought will probably be something to the effect of, you're imagining somebody who's arrogant and self-obsessed and thinks more of themselves than is warranted. And that's in line with the origin of the term, taken from the Greek figure Narcissus, literally the poster child for self-obsession, who fell in love with his own reflection. And yes, that is one type. That's called grandiose narcissism. And you will encounter that within the JWs, but the one that I encounter more commonly has a bit of a different flavor. Broadly speaking, this would be diagnosed as the covert narcissist. So these people are the ones who seem somehow always perpetually put upon. Their suffering is so much deeper than yours. Their pain is more dramatically tragic and seems to take center stage in all interactions. And then, magically, every conflict they happen to be a part of generally is never their fault. Now, on the surface, between grandiose narcissism and covert narcissism, these two types look very different. They almost seem like totally different things. One's loud and vainglorious, and the other is, also kind of loud, but chronically tragic, But even though they may seem very different, underneath, they kind of operate on the same rules. They have a tendency to make everything about themselves. They take everything super personally and kind of find a way to insert themselves into every narrative. And even when it's your trauma or something really significant happening for you, they can somehow find a way to make it about themselves. Let me walk you through a few other patterns that you commonly will see. They put other people down to build themselves up. They manipulate to get emotional reassurance. So, for example, you may encounter some kind of version of I'm just the worst, aren't I? I'm so terrible, and they kind of go on about it until finally you're like, no, you're amazing, you're the wind beneath my wings, you are great, you're great, please just stop. Or here's what can happen sometimes in the more severe cases, like you'll see them act annoyed when good things happen to you. Unless they can somehow take credit for it. It'll be like, oh, she got that scholarship? Well, that's because I've always pushed her to study, Or again, in some more severe cases, you'll see them almost kind of get positively giddy when something bad happens to you, which feels really incongruent and strange, but generally speaking, it's because either one, they get to have a feeling of superiority in some way, or they get the opportunity to play the savior, the person that comes in and rescues. And this is a common theme you'll see in their interactions where no matter what the situation is, one, somehow they will make someone else to kind of be the villain. And then in relationship, either frame themselves as the hero or the victim, or sometimes weirdly both simultaneously, which can be very confusing. And then there'll be this thing that happens sometimes where they fall out of favor with you, and you'll see them weaponize your community, retelling a story to your siblings or the elders where they're the innocent one and you're the ungrateful, emotionally unstable one. Anyways, you guys get the idea. And I'm sure by now you guys are all very aware of the term gaslighting, which is essentially the uncanny ability that people on the narcissistic spectrum have to rewrite history to suit their own purposes. And once you become aware of it, you'll notice their response to conflict tends to follow a very familiar and recognizable pattern. All right, let's paint this picture. So let's say 15-year-old Jonathan gives his first Bible reading, his first talk. And he does a pretty good job. He worked really hard on it. Of course he's filled with nerves, and of course it's his first talk, so he's going to be a bit nervous and stumble through it a little bit. But he did a really good job. And maybe after the meeting, when there's a little social time, one of the elders is coming up and being complimentary, conservatively complimentary, as they do. And despite the fact that everyone's being relatively congratulatory, Jonathan's father is clearly upset because it didn't meet the standards of what he expected. So right in front of the elder, he says something like, "You didn't really even study the Bible passage, did you? You embarrassed yourself and me." And that last part, of course, is the most important thing here. So, of course, Jonathan is pretty fucking devastated and has this thorn in his heart after all the work he had put in, just to have a fucking good job, son, would have been nice. And so it's a long car ride home, quiet and tense, as it often is. And then once they get home, Jonathan summons the courage to say, "Hey, Dad, when you said that in front of other people, I was already really nervous and it made me feel really humiliated." Now, of course, what we would want from a father in that moment is, "Oh my God, son, I am so sorry. Let me understand this better about what happened, because that is the last thing I would ever want for you, is to feel humiliated. Let's sort through this." But of course, we already know that's not where this is going. And so we cue the narcissist deflection cascade. Round 1. I didn't say that. This is gaslighting 101. just completely deny it. But then Jonathan follows up and says, you did say that, Dad. This is, and he repeats it exactly how it went. And he goes, I didn't say it like that. You're twisting my words again. But Jonathan persists. He says, you did say that, Dad. And this is round 2. Well, even if I did say that, it wasn't that bad. Which is, of course, minimization. Come on, it was just a little constructive feedback. You're being too sensitive. Again, avoiding responsibility and making you and your overly sensitive nature the problem. But Jonathan persists. He says, I'm not being too sensitive, Dad. That really sucked. Moving into round 3. Well, even if it was that bad, I didn't mean it. This is what's called intent washing. And from that point, reframing the whole situation as really a gesture of love. I'd never intentionally hurt you, son. I just want you to do well and represent Jehovah properly. And again, Jonathan persists. And he says, Dad, that may be true, but the way you went about doing it really hurt my feelings. And that's where we go into round 4. Even if I did mean it, well, you deserved it. If you'd actually prepared like I told you to do, then I wouldn't have had to say anything at all. You brought this upon yourself, which is blame shifting. Now again, let's assume Jonathan has been through a little bit of therapy and understands that this is bullshit, what is happening. And he says, Dad, you know what? I didn't bring this upon myself. You may have had good intentions, but the way you went about doing this was very hurtful. And now we shift into the final round. Boss level. Which is something like, oh, and now you're making me out to be the bad guy. Which is called victim reversal. I tried so hard to raise you right and guide you spiritually, and this is the thanks I get. Simultaneously making himself the victim and making you a piece of shit because you're not grateful enough for all of the things he's doing for you. Now, if any of this is sounding familiar, you know how this goes, which it never results in, oh, you know what? You're bringing some things to light for me, son, that I need to reflect on. Oh, no. This is how it goes, and it escalates, and if none of that works, then it shifts to things like, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. What are we even talking about? Or a plea for sympathy. You're right, I am a terrible person. I can never do anything right. I am such a terrible father, blah, 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 blah. Or, I don't know, full-on character assassination. Yeah, it's fucking gruesome, man. And, here's the thing. Once you understand the mechanisms in place, once you understand that this is actually not an encounter that is operating on the same principles, meaning good faith, that we are both here to think about our own behaviors and actions in relation to another person, once you completely abandon that idea of hope that they will be self-aware and self-reflective, you start having this really beautiful moment. You know that scene in The Matrix, right? The whole movie is like fight, 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 run, 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 fight, 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 run, run, run. Engaging with these agents and just relentlessly and never quite getting anywhere. And every encounter leaves you feeling more breathless and confused. And then there's that moment at the end of the film, where he starts to see through the Matrix. He starts to see exactly what it is, and it shifts from a feeling of intensity and desperation to wonder and awe. And all of a sudden, the bullets are flying at him, but not only are they not hitting him, they're like stopping dead right in front, and he has zero fear of them. He just starts looking at each bullet like, look at that fucker. Isn't that weird? Ain't that some shit? And anyways, this is what I'd very much hope for you, to have this experience once you understand the mechanisms at play here, because then it stops feeling really personal. It stops penetrating so deeply into your heart because you recognize, oh, this person is playing by a completely different set of rules and understanding about what it means to be a good person. And again, let me be so clear. These are not bad people. They're not. They do bad things. They act terribly in really shitty ways. And I've spent a lot of my life trying to understand it, finding ways to penetrate it. And I've also seen glimpses of what is underneath all of this bluster is really just a really sad inner child that really needs a lot of love and doesn't know how to get it and acts in ways that are terrible and tragically prevent them from getting it. Doesn't mean you should tolerate it. Doesn't mean you have to keep showing up for it with endless, boundless compassion and empathy. But at the very least, these are not people to be demonized. They've got some rough, fucked up shit. Speaking in clinical terms, they fucked up inside. That's the takeaway on this one. So yeah, the question is why? What's going on with them? There's lots of different theories. This personality style is related to trauma or attachment wounds or just the cosmic dice roll of human psychology. And what I can say is for sure, nobody has completely figured it out yet. And what I'm about to share from this point forward is really just my own anecdotal experience, from personal experience and also through the secondhand experience of all the clients that I work with. And here's what I witnessed. Basically, this personality type, this style, whatever you want to call it, I've seen it emerge from both highly traumatic homes and I've seen it emerge in homes that seem perfectly functional in every possible way, like really the best case scenario of a loving, supportive, present family. And I've still seen this personality style emerge within one of the members of their family. So I'm a little less inclined to put a lot of weight into theories that place a lot of emphasis on nurture over nature. But again, that's just a personal opinion. One of the things that most of the field is aligned on anyways is that underneath all of this is shame. There's a deep, dark well of shame within them. And it's not like your everyday like, oops, I farted in yoga class kind of shame. We all carry shame, and no one likes to be wrong, but most of us have the capacity to reflect and own up when we've done something wrong or made a mistake. In short, because most of us are able to also carry the belief that even though we made a mistake, we're still good at our core. But for people that are more far on the narcissistic spectrum, this core belief that I am a good person, that it's okay, that at deep down I am a good person seems to be absent. It's like this vast black hole level core belief that they are fundamentally unlovable and irredeemable. And that shame is so dark and so painful that on some unconscious level they say, I can't even acknowledge its existence. It's this shame that must never be seen even by myself. And so one of the more common ideas is that in relation to this shame, they build a fortress of ego around it. And this is why I'll encounter these situations with people on the narcissistic spectrum. These social situations where they look even slightly bad, and even sometimes these situations where they didn't look bad, but for some reason they took it that way. When these things happen, especially in public, you will see them fly into a narcissistic rage. I mean, it will get white hot in intensity, and it'll be completely disproportionate to whatever the fuck happened. And in this rage, they will often aim their fire at you. Instead of really examining the trigger, really just focusing on you are the cause of that trigger, and they will make you pay until the scales have been rebalanced for them. It's some gnarly shit. Again, another clinical term, gnarly shit. Oh my God. It is, man. And again, this rage, it just comes from this terror that they feel at the potential exposure of this wound that they can't even acknowledge within themselves. So again, what this results in is this kind of false narrative about themselves that they need to maintain. It requires constant maintenance in order to maintain this illusion, which is pretty different from the reality of the situation. And in order to maintain this, they need a steady feed of what's called narcissistic supply. In short, that just means constant admiration, attention, compliance, and praise from other people. And when you understand this, and you understand that that's what they're doing, you will see this play out in their interactions in all sorts of ways. Ideally, according to them, when everyone is praising them and loving them, that everything is fine. But when they are not getting that or feeling like they need it, they will find ways to coerce or coax it out of you or manipulate the situation. And when that doesn't work, they will somehow create some kind of chaotic scene as a result. And I'm pausing because as I talk about this, one of the things that's difficult is this is a kind of this open question. When you start recognizing these patterns, the question is, does this person know what the fuck they're doing? Like, do they know on some level that they're creating these situations in order to get this narcissistic supply? And again, there's varying accounts of people that are on varying parts of that spectrum, having varying levels of awareness. But, one of the things I have noticed is that when people are really far on this part of the spectrum, number one, self-awareness is really absent. That's part of the problem. And no, I mean, if you're asking me anecdotally, I really don't think they know what they're doing. I don't think they're in their head kind of constantly aware of this manipulative game that they're playing. And that's what makes it feel so scary and terrifying, is because there's something else operating there. Something that really isn't about conscious choices, but more this underlying mechanism that was put in place long before this person even had awareness. Anyways, the takeaway here is that they're not bad people, but they are deeply wounded people. And just kind of tragic, they want love so desperately and are completely unaware that the ways in which they go about getting love is exactly what pushes people away. Anyways, I realize I have talked us into a very sad corner. I'm sorry about that. Kind of just this feeling like, wow, that's just fucked and sad. Oh, let's see if we can try to dig ourselves out of this hole. Let's move on to this question. What is it about the Jehovah's Witness organization? Why are there so many narcissistic personalities there? Do they create them, or are they just a magnet for them? And again, let me just start by saying I do not have research to back up anything that I'm going to say after this. It's only my own anecdotal observations and sense of things. But as a starting point, it seems easy for me to conceptualize why someone on the narcissistic spectrum may be drawn in to an organization like the Jehovah's Witnesses. This idea of them holding special inside information, being chosen, feeling superior over others in this kind of self-righteous, condescending way. And yeah, there's something there that seems to make sense to me about why that would be appealing. But it's also worth noting that the Jehovah's Witness organization, and in short, is like a narcissistic entity with legal representation. If you step back and think about it, as an entity, Jehovah's Witness requires constant praise, unwavering loyalty, and punishes dissent as betrayal. And again, when it's clear that they no longer have any power over you, they go on a smear campaign with your friends and family. So again, we can think of the parallels, let's start with grandiosity. It's not much more grandiose than saying we are God's chosen people. But then there's that fragility in that certainty, they're so easily rattled in any way. If you question us, you're spiritually sick. That could be the only conclusion I draw from this interaction, There's, of course, the victimhood. We are being persecuted for our righteousness. Just a quick side note, man. Oh my God. I remember I was pretty fucking bullied quite a bit in school. I got a chipped tooth to show for it. And I remember being like 7 and thinking, as I'm getting the shit kicked out of me, like, oh, this must mean I'm on the right path because Jesus was also persecuted. So clearly this is evidence that I'm doing the right thing, Completely ignoring the fact that I was a pretty mouthy kid, and I'm sure to some degree brought a lot of that on myself. In fairness. Oh yeah, where were we? Narcissist entity, Jehovah's Witnesses are that. Yeah, of course, this is a gaslighting. Such fucking obvious gaslighting. The number of predictions they made and the scrambling they have to do to reframe or just sometimes completely deny, flat out deny, we never said that, or you misunderstood the new light, or that was before we had the new light. A million different ways to avoid accountability and imply that there's something wrong with you that you're asking questions about it. And then, there's just the constant demand for praise in every form, Every experience and story out in service becomes basically just another performance review for Jehovah. Anyways, getting back to the question of whether they create narcissists or draw them, that's still up for debate. But frankly, I think there are plenty of people who are born into that religion. I would assume you're one of them. Who grew up to be deeply empathetic, emotionally intelligent human beings. So no, in this moment, I'm not inclined to think that Jehovah's Witnesses have the capacity even to create narcissists. But what I am more inclined to believe, based on years of clinical work and lived experience, is that the structure of the JW organization, with its rigid hierarchy, authoritarian control, and obsession with its image, is incredibly appealing to someone already on the narcissistic spectrum. And in my opinion, it basically offers them a framework that not only tolerates those ways of thinking and behaving, but it actually rewards those traits. It gives them power. It gives them status. And maybe most importantly and most dangerously, it gives them moral cover. So in short, if you're already wired to crave admiration and control, this is like walking into an ego buffet with a VIP pass, And once again, I'm realizing I still have not quite managed to pull us out of this fucking bummer of a conversation line. And I suppose that for the time being, we'll just have to allow it to be what it is. But let me just give you a few closing thoughts. Again, in summary, narcissists are not evil, but their behavior is destructive. They are not irredeemable, but in my experience, they very rarely change. And we create a lot of distress for ourselves as a result of expecting them to behave like healthier people. We keep assuming that they're operating in good faith, and that if they realize that they are wrong, that they'll actually admit it. And we like to hold on to this belief that they are trying just as hard as you are to operate in relation to the facts. But the reality is, in most cases, what they're operating on is whatever course of action reaffirms what they desperately need to believe, or whatever outcome will leave their ego most intact and establish that they were and always will be in the right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a very deep, nuanced topic, and we will absolutely be doing another episode focusing more on the impact of being raised by somebody on the narcissistic spectrum, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we can do about it. In the meantime, let me just say this. If you know someone who sounds like the person I described in this episode, do yourself a favor. Consider letting go of the hope that they will see reason and start just setting boundaries necessary to protect your own energy. Doing this doesn't make you the villain, and you're not cruel for protecting your peace. And as much as they may have made you question your sanity, trust me, my friend, you are not crazy. Oh my God, I keep coming back into this feeling. I'm like just saying shit and like, everything just feels heavy. It just feels heavy. Oh, I keep going like, all right, well, let's just dive back in. Well, maybe it'll emerge less heavy. I just keep popping up like, nope, still heavy. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to pick a song for this episode. Jesus, that's going to be a tough one. I'm going to have to do this in post. We'll both be surprised, whatever I figure out. Oh, let me actually pretend. Let me pretend like I've already picked the song.
Sometimes I feel I've got to.
Oh my God! What a tremendous song choice. This is so apropos. Wow, you've done it again, Ryan. woven in the perfect song choice. I mean, well in advance to today's topic that would just somehow tie it all up at the end. Oh my God, in the lyrics, listen to those beats and tones, how great they are. This is so stupid.
Once I ran to you, now I run from you. This tainted love you've given, I give you all a girl could give you. Take my tears and that's not many.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you found this helpful. I promise in future episodes, let's think of this as like the end of The Empire Strikes Back. You know, when Han Solo gets encapsulated in carbonite and we're all just left with this sad what the fuck feeling. Well, listen, there will be a return of the Jedi. And we will talk a lot more about how to access those Jedi powers for good. Okay. Good enough? Good. All right, if you have any questions, feedback, concerns, likes, please do stuff, subscribe, etc. drryanlee.com/retreat. And until next time, remember, you are brave. You are strong. And let me just leave you with this, too. There's some part of you that's wondering, am I a narcissist? Could I be a narcissist? Maybe I'm a narcissist. Maybe I need to think a little bit more about my behaviors and the way they're affecting others. Chances are, if you're having that conversation with yourself, you're probably not. So I'll just leave you with that. And if any of these thoughts are plaguing your mind, let me reassure you, you, my friend, are not alone. Brothers and sisters, we're thrilled to announce some exciting new adjustments from the governing body, part of our ongoing effort to stay spiritually flexible while also emotionally rigid. Effective immediately. Brothers, you may now wear beards, provided they are kept spiritually neutral. No goatees of rebellion or mustaches of independent thinking. If your beard makes you feel cooler than Jesus, then please, shave it immediately. Sisters, you may now wear pants, so long as they don't imply confidence, ambition, mobility, or just a kind of general uppity feel about you. And as an act of unprecedented mercy, you may now say hello and how are you to disfellowshipped persons. But please, ensure that your tone of voice and body language make it very clear you are not genuinely interested in their well-being. A quick soulless nod will also suffice. As always, please remain anxiously and terrifyingly alert for further adjustments to Jehovah's never-changing truth. That's all for today. Go in faith. In faith. Go in faith. Go in fucking faith.